Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 2 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is Halloween murders. So, before I get into the episode, I have a couple things to talk about. Number one, this is a little spookier of an episode. These are real murders that happen on Halloween, real crimes, real things that have happened. So if any of the things that I'm about to talk about, some of them do involve children. So if murder and children is not your cup of tea, or if you don't want the holiday ruined or whatever, please don't listen. I would say I personally think that it is okay for younger listeners. Maybe not like young listeners, but younger, mid-teen area should be okay. But anyone younger than that, I would say maybe stay away and check back next week and see if we have anything for you then. The other thing I want to say is if you haven't yet, please go check out the website. All sorts of stuff is going up. I'm going to try to get some new merch up there this coming week. So get excited for that and see pictures of that on Instagram and stuff like that. But the website is www.whispersfrombelow.com. It's super cool. You can sign up to be a member there. There's merch. You can download episodes through there. You can reach me directly. It sends a message to my phone if you use the contact page and says like, hey, what's up, girl? Whatever you want to say. So if you ever want to reach out to me for anything, you can do that through the website. Without further ado, let's get into Halloween murders. So the first one we're going to talk about and get out of the way, I think is probably the most famous one, at least that I know of, which is the murder of Timothy O'Brien. And this one is probably the longest one that I have to talk about, just because I feel like there's backstory that makes it better and juicier. The other two, you can sort of still get a good gist of what's happening without too much like foreshadowing backstory things. So this is basically about how a dad murdered his child, for those of you that are unaware, on Halloween. So his name is Richard Clark O'Brien, and he was an optician who lived with his wife and his two children in Deer Park, Texas, and they lived there in 1974. He had an 8-year-old son named Timothy O'Brien. He had a 5-year-old daughter named Elizabeth O'Brien, like at the time of the murder, and Daneen O'Brien was his wife. On Halloween, he decided to take his children trick-or-treating. For those of you that don't know, if you're not like American or whatever, trick-or-treating is this thing that we do in the States, where you dress up in a costume as a kid and you go door to door and you say trick-or-treat, and then they give you candy. And normally a parent would walk with you if you're like a younger kid, and then as you get older, you kind of branch out and do things yourself. But it's a really popular thing here because candy. So that happens on October 31st every single year. I don't think that's a thing in other countries. I'm pretty sure that's just American. But if I'm being an idiot, like, let me know. Like shoot me a message and be like, hey, it's a thing. But I'm pretty sure it's not. But anyway, so he took his kids trick-or-treating because they were very young and he doesn't want them going out at night. And that is always on October 31st every single year. So he went out October 31st, 1974. He went with his neighbor and his neighbor's two children who were like of a similar age to Timothy and Elizabeth. They went to one of the houses and the person wasn't answering the door, but all the lights were on. And they were just taking a really long time to get to the door. So Richard offered to stay back and wait for someone to come to the door. And the kids would go forward and have a grand old time, and he would catch up with them once the candy kind of got back. Suspect, right? But anyway, so the children run on ahead, and he ends up returning to them a few houses later with 5 21-inch pixie sticks, which is fairly large. I mean, it's like almost 2 feet of pixie stick. Like that's a lengthy pixie stick. I don't know if this is a candy everywhere, but I'm going to describe it anyway. Pixie sticks are like this long tube and you open up the top, and it's just like a sugary. It's basically just like flavored sugar in a little like tube. Um, but the container for it is like papery, like a very thick paper. So you just tear it, and then you can like chug the pixie stick, and it's it's like flavored sugar. What's not to love? So he ended up giving, and that is important of like texture wise. That's why I'm explaining it. And so he gave the 4 of the pixie sticks to the children that were trick-or-treating. And then the 5th one was given to this 10-year-old boy that he had recognized from church when they were on their way home. Timothy tried to open the candy, but he had a really hard time opening it. And then like the powder wouldn't come out. And so Richard, I wrote Ronald in my notes. I can't believe I just like fully messed his name up while I was researching this. That's amazing. Richard helped him get the powder out, and even got him Kool-Aid to drink to wash down the pixie stick. Is it still pixie sticks? Or is it pixie stick if it's singular? Because it's like STIX. So like, is that just the name? Like, is it a singular pixie sticks? Or is it like a pixie stick and then like multiple pixie sticks? I'm going to say pixie stick, but I feel like that's incorrect. That's not really important. Grammar on how to say pixie sticks is not really what we're after today. Anyway, so then pretty much immediately, Timothy began complaining that his stomach was really hurting. He started violently throwing up. And then on the way to the hospital, he died. Like pretty much less than an hour after consuming whatever was in the pixie stick. The autopsy revealed that he was poisoned with like powdered cyanide. In fact, there was enough cyanide to kill 2 adults in his body. Richard claimed that he couldn't remember where he got the candy because like the pixie stick powder was mixed with the cyanide. So they were like, it was a candy he ate. Where did you get it? What house? And he like couldn't remember where they got the candy from. And they only went to houses on 2 different streets because it was raining that night. So they only went down 2 streets, which means there wasn't that many houses. So there shouldn't have been a reason for him to not remember where it came from. The police asked, if anybody received a pixie stick from him, or from a house, like who was with you that night? Did they get pixie sticks? Blah, blah, blah. No other houses were really giving out pixie sticks. So it was easy to track down like who got what. They found out that the pixie sticks had clearly been tampered with because the top of the bag, like the little tube, was stapled shut, meaning that it had been opened and then resealed. And when they got back all the pixie sticks, the others contained enough to kill about 3 adults. And as far as the 10-year-old kid, he couldn't get it open. And when the police called her to be like, did you get a pixie stick from this man? She was like freaking out and was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I wonder if he ate it already. And she couldn't find it in his candy bag. So she like ran upstairs to where he was sleeping, and he was sleeping with it next to him. He couldn't get it open because it was stapled shut. And he couldn't figure out how to open it. So he just went to bed instead of eating it. And that saved his life. Laziness saved this child's life. Which is just wild to me. Like he was like, oh, I don't know how to open it. Whatever. I'll just eat it tomorrow. And then it turns out that literally saved this kid from dying. So only Timothy died. No one else opened the pixie sticks. So then we find out some very interesting information about Richard, because they weren't, suspecting the father at first, but then they find out that he's about $100,000 in debt, which back in the day, that's the equivalent of about $520,000 in 2019. So he's got that much debt. And then he had taken out life insurance policies on his children. He took out $10,000 policies on each of his children, which equal like 51,000, basically like 52,000 in like 2019 money. And then he kept adding policies to his children. The days like leading up to Halloween, he kept adding and adding and adding. The day after Timothy died, he called his insurance company asking if he could get the money from the policy. He couldn't keep a job. He had 21 jobs in like 2 years. Just super in debt, super like really shady guy. And to make things even more crazy is that they have a record of him going into a chemical store and trying to purchase cyanide, but he left when they said that the smallest amount he could get was like 5 pounds of it or something. And he was like, oh, that's too much, like, goodbye. So, like, they know that he, like, asked about it, and, like, he wasn't being sneaky. He was just kind of a dumb guy, you know?
I don't know about you, but I personally hate having to go to the grocery store. It takes up so much of my day when I could be starting a new hobby with that time, like soap carving, or collecting the sick bags out of airplanes. With Instacart, it makes grocery shopping fast and easy, all while allowing me to stay in my underwear. Instacart allows you to order all of the things you usually get from your local stores, delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Not only that, but it will also give you smart suggestions for new items based off of your preferences, as well as highlight deals to help you save some money. The shoppers handpick perfect produce and make sure that your eggs get to you safely. You can get free delivery on your first order over $35 by following the link in the show notes. This also lets Instacart know that we sent you, and it helps support Whispers from Below. So if you hate grocery shopping as much as I do, try Instacart today and enjoy getting your groceries the easy way.
So obviously, Richard ended up getting convicted because there was like copious amounts of evidence and just like there was no way it wasn't him. He was executed on March 31st, 1984. And this little tidbit I found hilarious. If you were like a protester of like not like Halloween tradition, but like of the prank things or whatever, and you were there protesting like murder, the protesters of the death penalty, I couldn't think of the word. Oh my God. If you were a protester to the death penalty, they threw candy at you when he died, because you were there to protest. And people that were outside just like cheering for his death started yelling trick or treat when they announced that he had died. Just a fun little tidbit. People are really hateful, but I thought that was kind of funny. Like the minute he died, people were like, trick or treat. Like, that's so rude. Anyway, I thought that was funny. So that's the end of our first little novella, our first little Halloween related murder. Poor Timothy O'Brien. At least we know what happened to him. It wasn't like a mystery sort of situation. There are a lot of Halloween cases that are like, a lot happens on Halloween and it fell through the cracks and no one really knows what happened. And that stuff I think is more unfortunate. At least there was justice for this poor boy. But I'm sure his sister is scarred and does not trick or treat anymore. I mean, by now she's probably like a grown ass adult. But back in the day, I'm sure after that night, she was like, fuck trick or treating. I'm good. Thank you. I would do that. I wouldn't try to do that anymore. So the next one is a pretty short story. I just thought it was kind of funny. This is the murder of Maria Adams. And when I say funny, I don't mean funny. Okay, let me clarify. When I say that things are funny, especially with things like this, obviously I do care deeply for the families that are affected by this. And I care deeply about, getting proper convictions and getting justice done and all of that. When I say funny, I mean that the premise of how it started was ridiculous. So when I say funny, I'm not trying to be offensive or, hurt any of the families that have been affected by anything like this or anything like that, or the communities. That is never my intention. I say funny because in a dark, macabre way, it is funny. If you're coming to this podcast and you're new and you think that I'm being an awful, terrible person, just know that is never where any of this is coming from. If I make jokes or I laugh, it is never from a place of malice. But this is kind of funny, and you'll see what I mean. So Maria Adams was age 49, and she was murdered by being stabbed, multiple times on Halloween in 2011. She was stabbed by her friend, quote unquote, but probably like lover, Liddell Peoples. He had become extremely enraged over missing a bag of Halloween candy. Keep in mind, she was 49 and he was 55. They ended up arguing. The argument got heated, and she threw a plate at him. He ended up getting like a laceration over his eye, which corroborated that part of the story of like, she threw a plate at me and we got into an argument, whatever. And so then though like he kept saying like it was self-defense. There was like no clear evidence of like that she was ever going to hurt him. Like he was pretty much unscathed, except for the cut above his brow, but she was like viciously beaten and like murdered. And he was suffering from like a lot of mental problems, and a cocaine addiction, but he was seen as like fit to stand trial. He kept pleading self-defense, and I wrote, but we been knew that that wasn't it. Like we know that it wasn't self-defense, and that was his way of trying to get out of, whatever. Because he stabbed her like a lot. Like there was no reason. He ended up getting found guilty, of course. But when you look up like the actual court cases and stuff, it literally says like he killed her over like a bag of Halloween candy. Like that's not a sane person, but he was sane enough to know that what he was doing was incorrect. But the part that I just find amusing is like this man was like, "Where's my candy?" and then like killed someone over it. Like who the fuck does that? What person is like, "I'm going to murder someone because I'm missing a bag of Halloween candy?" That's just crazy. Like never would my brain be like, "Let's kill someone because Halloween candy." I love candy as much as the next person, but shit, that's a little far, don't you think? So that's just a short little story. The last story that I have today is about the BJ Lisk murders on the Griffin family. Well, I guess it would be the Lisk family. I don't know how the names worked in that family, but you'll understand what I mean. It's like a step parent scenario, so I'm unclear of how the names worked in that family. But this one is pretty sad. And he pretty much admitted to being guilty right away, so we know that it was him. And there was no possible way that it could have been anybody else. Like, there's no way. But yeah, just kind of like a sad, creepy story. And because it was Halloween, there's some stuff in it that was like even creepier. So Devin Griffin, age 16, returned home in Ohio on Halloween to find his family dead. The reason that he wasn't at home, he sang in his like Sunday morning church service and stuff. So he was staying with his father the night before, his like biological father, and then came home at like maybe 9 a.m. to like change shirts and then went to the church service. Came back to a completely silent house. He went upstairs and played some video games. By like 1 p.m., he was like, nobody's up and normally people are up. So he tried to wake up his mom, and his mom and dad were laying side by side in bed with the sheets pulled up over their head. And he was like, "Oh, funny prank. Like, come on, it's, whatever." So he pulled the covers back to see like a blood-soaked pillow and his mom's like dead expression. And he was like, "Haha, very funny. Like, what a Halloween prank." And then soon realized that that was not the case. Which that has to be what a realization to come to as a 16-year-old boy. You're like, haha, funny prank, mom, like, fuck you. And then you're like, oh no, you're dead. And now I feel like a weird person because I've been staring at your dead body, like telling you, like, I don't know, that would just make me feel kind of uncomfortable. But like the whole bed was soaked in blood. He ran outside, he called his aunt who came over, and then the aunt called the police and they got people over as soon as possible. The parents had been shot multiple times with a small, like, 2.22, I don't know, guns, like a .22 pistol or something like that. I don't know what that means. 22 millimeters? Is that what that is? Whatever. I don't know guns. But a small gun. They were shot with a small gun. And Susan had been sexually assaulted. Derek Griffin had been beaten to death with a claw hammer. His room was completely locked when they searched the house. So they had to bust down the door, and they found him curled up in a ball with like covered in blood and dead. And it was clear that he had been murdered prior to the parents being murdered. The main suspect and the person that eventually admitted to it was BJ Lisk, who is the biological son of the stepfather, Bill. BJ had a pretty troubled past. I mean, he was on house arrest by age 16. He was very violent. He would attack the police. He got into many different fights, including one with his stepmother, Susan, who he then kicked the shit out of, like beat her up. He ended up getting charged for it, but he was found incompetent to stand trial due to his like mental state. So the charges got dropped. And BJ got kicked out of the house when he was 18 because he had attacked Susan while she was in the shower. He ended up staying in a hospital to be treated for his schizoaffective disorder, bipolar type. So basically like borderline schizophrenic, but more like bipolar depression and episodes, like bipolar episodes with this sort of schizophrenic tendencies and things like that. Not a great combination for a young boy who is now dealing with a new family and like a new mom and like new brothers, and like it's a bad combination for sure. Um, he he had ended up staying the night on October 30th. And Devin, as I said before, had stayed with his biological dad. But the reason that BJ had stayed the night on October 30th is that in order for his father really wanted to maintain a relationship with him and like really thought that he would be a good kid if he did that. So he took him on like a hunting trip to the like family cabin and was like, let's go hang out and just have like a good time and get to know each other more and like just really bond and like take a breath like you're doing so well in your halfway house and blah blah blah. So then they came back and had a couple drinks and he was like, I don't feel comfortable driving you back to the halfway house tonight because I've been drinking, so we'll make you a bed on the couch. And that's what the police found when they came in was, an empty bed on the couch. um, Bill constantly visited his son and tried to maintain this healthy relationship with him, and it just like kind of blew up in his face. Um, the family, it was determined later that the family had already been dead by the time that Devin came home to change his shirt. The parents had been shot around like 6:30 a.m. and had been dead. But when Derek came home, or when Devin came home, BJ was there. He was still in the house. And BJ, Devin kept saying BJ seemed so like happy and like lighthearted and like actually asked where I was going and like meant it. Uh, which is really spooky. But then later when he admitted to the crime, he was like, I regret it. And like, I can't believe I did it. But like at the time he was so happy. I just think that that's like really creepy. Um, then, as I said before, they determined that Derek was murdered first, and then he went in and shot the parents. They weren't sure if the sexual assault was before or after death for Susan. But regardless, it was either really close to her being dead or really close to her being shot and killed. So like it was either really close to right after the death or it was right before, very close to. He ended up getting arrested because BJ had taken his dad's car and driven to the family hunting cabin. So obviously they tracked the car because it was missing and they found him. He pled guilty pretty much right away and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He ended up killing himself in prison in 2015 when he was at the age of 29. And he was 18 at the time. I don't know if I said the year, but that would mean, oh my God, math. I'm so bad at math. That would mean it was like 2004, right? When he murdered these people. That sounds right. Because he was 18 and that was 11. Yeah. 2004. I'm going to stick to that. But yeah, that one's just like a sad, just a troubled kid that couldn't get it together, and his dad tried really hard, like all accounts of his dad. And like, I know that there's this weird thing that happens when people die where everybody just wants to talk about the good things that they did and they never want to talk about the bad stuff, to like honor their memory or whatever. But like all the accounts of him are like, he was a great guy and he was just really trying to like have a relationship with his son and it didn't work. And now he's dead and like that sucks. We all told him he should have just left BJ. But honestly, I don't think that leaving BJ would have done anything different. I think BJ was bound to at least hurt the family in some way. Maybe he wouldn't have killed them if he didn't stay the night. That's true. But I don't know. I feel like he was troubled enough and angry enough that he would have harmed them regardless of whether or not the dad had him in his life or not. That could have actually fueled the fire sooner. If the dad was like, hey, fuck you, goodbye, that could have made him even more upset. So, he was just a very troubled kid who didn't get the help that he needed, or rather was given the option to get the help that he needed, but didn't take the hand extended. So that's the end of that story. One thing that I want to talk about, because I just learned this while doing this research. this is a Halloween related thing. It's not really like a true crime story necessarily, but just like a fun tidbit that I wanted to like toss in at the end of the episode. I was doing research on razor blades in candy because we all know that story of like people getting poisoned by Halloween candy or razor blades in their candy. And the closest thing I could find was that first story of Timothy O'Brien. And what's really fascinating is that the razor blades in the candy in the apple thing is like a myth. It's not real. We have this collective like Mandela effect that it's real, and it's not. Like police records show like almost no deaths per year from Halloween candy. There's never really been an account of people. There's been like minor accounts of like there was one woman that was like really mentally unstable, and instead of giving candy out, she gave out like rat poison and like ant traps and stuff. But like that's really it. There was one dentist that gave people like laxatives, but no one died. Um, the razor blade and the candy thing is not really a thing. I think it was created to sort of strike fear, not fear, I guess that's a little extreme, but to sort of put caution into parents, letting their kids just go to strangers' houses and get candy. And I totally understand that. That is a scary thing. So I think they were just trying to create caution of like, make sure you check like if, if the package looks like it's been opened, if there's a hole in the packaging, if it's, done weird, like if there's a staple in it, if there's, that could be something that's potentially dangerous and don't eat that, But I remember when I was growing up, my parents were like, be careful, like let us scan through candy and like make sure that there's no like razor blades in it or whatever. And I was like, holy shit, that's so scary. But it's like not a thing. It's never happened. It's never been a thing. It's a myth that was made up by who? I don't know. But it's a collective thing in our brains that is a thing that happens, and it's like not real. It's crazy to me. Anyway, I just thought that was fun to like throw in at the end. That's all I have today for this episode. Last week was a really long one, so I wanted to do a shorter one this week, sort of balance it out. But yeah, let me just do all the usual plugs real quick. Check out the website if you haven't, like I said at the beginning, www.whispersfrombelow.com. Super cool, super dope. You can buy merch there. The merch is really cool. We have like bomber jackets, hats, beanies, socks, pillowcases, stickers. I think there are some laptop cases on there now, t-shirts that say listeners from below, all sorts of cool stuff on there. So go check it out. There's a fanny pack that's like super great. You can check that out on the Instagram. Great segue, killing it. The Instagram is Whispers from Below. No spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. I try to post there, a couple times a week, whether it's a picture of me and some of the merch, or it's just a picture that I like, or like recently, I got to 2,000 downloads. Applause. I got to 2,000 downloads and it was very exciting. And so I posted about that and I was like, thank you guys so much. And also through Instagram and the website. One of my favorite things to do is fan episodes. So I've had a couple people reach out. Recently, it's been two friends of mine that have reached out and been like, these would be great ideas for your podcast. And I was like, you're right. These are amazing. And I did them right away and they were fun. And you get a shout out and I tag you on Instagram and you get a shout out in the description of the episode as well. So if you want to shoot me a message about episode ideas or anything like that, you can do it via Instagram, or there's a contact page on the website, and that goes right to my phone. So if you're saying like, hey, what's up, girl, try this, like I'll respond to you there, or you can just shoot me a direct message on Instagram. I'm Gen Z, so my phone is pretty much on me at all times, so I'll probably respond to you pretty quickly. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Please share this with your friends. It's spooky season. It's Halloween season. This is a time that I really, really want the podcast to grow and pick up speed. I know that we're kind of like halfway. We're almost done with the month, honestly. But there are people that are still craving some spooky content. And if you know any friends of yours that are, send them my way. The more listeners I get, the more cool stuff I can do for you. The more cool products I can talk to you guys about, the more stuff I can put out there for you. So it would be really great for me if you guys could just share it by word of mouth with like one person, because if each of you does that doubles my listener count, assuming that they all tune in. Send it to people, share it on social media if you want. That would be absolutely amazing. Tag the Whispers from Below account. You can also tag me. My personal account is JUTIN_geese, like the animal. If you're interested in my personal life at all, you can tag me and the podcast account. But really, that's all I can ask, is just that you guys continue to share. And if you like the podcast a lot, please share it with people, because I'd love someone else to love it as much as you do, So remember, Halloween candy being poisoned is not really a thing unless it's your own father. So if you get candy from your parents, please check it. Number 2, murders happen a lot on Halloween. There's a lot of murders. I really had to sift through and pick specific ones. And number 3, please continue to wear a mask and wash your hands and vote. Please.